As many of you may know, my name is Father Patrick Griffin. I'm a Vincentian priest ministering here at St. John's University. I serve as the executive director for the Vincentian Center for Church and Society, which is part of the mission area of the university under Father Aidan Rooney. With Jennifer Kasowski, my secretary, and Giulio Bonanno, our graduate assistant, I manage the Vincentian Chair of Social Justice. This year, our program around social justice will focus upon the Catholic intellectual tradition and the university. There will be 6 presentations, 3 in the fall and 3 in the spring. And each session will give special attention to the Catholic intellectual tradition as it influences a discipline in a college of the university. So, for example, healthcare, education, law, business, the College of Professional Studies, and liberal arts. All the talks are intended for everyone, but each will give a special focus to a particular discipline. The Catholic intellectual tradition is the culture which defines a Catholic university. It provides the foundation that gives a united focus to the work that is done here, with the primary emphasis on the truth. The tradition values the 2,000-year history of the Christian community and embraces its ongoing pursuit of wisdom and knowledge across all fields. Faith and reason have a sincere part in this effort. The hope and intent of our 6-session program rests in the willingness and eagerness of our university for continued and deeper growth in the Catholic Vincentian mission, which is to educate and consecrate our community in the way of truth that emerges from the academy and from the human experience, as well as our faith tradition. A particular focus for us rests upon the promotion of persons who are marginalized. Let me begin by offering a prayer and then explaining the flow of our afternoon session. We should also be attentive to the fact that our Jewish brothers and sisters are celebrating Sukkot in these days. You notice the tent around the campus. We join our prayer to theirs. And so we say, loving God, you are the source of all understanding, and so we ask for your guidance. As you led your holy people through the desert, so we ask that you grant us insight to comprehend what is being said today and the desire to apply these words in meaningful ways to our lives. Help us to see beyond our own perspectives so that we may have a wider and fuller comprehension of our world and our place within it. O Holy Spirit, we invite you to dwell among us, filling us with your light and your guidance. Pour out your love upon us and grant us the courage to surrender to your will and allow your transformative power to work in our lives. Today, we ask you to bless the words of our speaker, Dr. Jason King. Grant him the grace to say those things that we need to hear as a community here at St. John's University. Let his words open our minds to new directions and enable us to seek and find you within our teaching, within our study, and within our thinking. We ask this blessing, O Lord, in your holy name, for you rule forever and ever. Amen. So, in a moment, I will introduce Dr. James Wolfinger, the Dean of our School of Education. Dr. Wolfinger will offer a university welcome to our speaker, and he will present our student, Ryan Boswell, who will then introduce our speaker, Jason. Dr. King will then speak for about 45 minutes on the soul of Catholic higher education. Then he will accept questions and comments from our assembly. And then at 3:10, I will return to the stage and bring our gathering to a swift close. And so, thank you for your attention. Dr. Wolfinger.
Thank you, Father Griffin, very much for the welcome. While this is a Catholic-focused event, it's not actually church, so I'd invite those who are standing at the back to come and fill in the front pews. If you would, feel free, come on forward and have a seat up front. And I'm going to go ahead and offer a few remarks about the School of Education at St. John's University, and then to turn it over to our student leaders. So first of all, welcome to everyone coming out today. It's a great turnout here in D'Angelo Center for a really important talk. As Dean of the School of Education, I'm really excited to host Dr. Jason King, who's going to deliver the second lecture in our Catholic Intellectual Tradition in the University Speaker Series. His talk today is entitled The Soul of Catholic Education, and it's really ideally suited to us here in the School of Education. Our students, our faculty, our staff live the Vincentian Catholic mission every day. Our school was established in 1908, and at that point, the School of Pedagogy. It's had different names over the years, but for 117 years, we have really been the part of the university, as much as any other unit, that is out in the community living the word of St. John's University. We prepare educators, counselors, school leaders, and so on for the New York City metro area and beyond. We work closely with the Brooklyn Diocese, Brooklyn and Queens, Rockville Center, and the Archdiocese. But at the same time, we also prepare teachers and school leaders for the New York City public schools. So it's both a Catholic mission and a larger education mission. And that's what everybody here, in some way, is committed to. So we're known for our commitment to the community here in Queens and beyond, and for providing a first-rate education for all students, because we want these students who come to us to experience a faith tradition that sees our work as elevating individuals, families, and communities. I was at DePaul University for 16 years before coming here about 3.5 years ago now. Our president at the time was a man named Father Dennis Holtschneider, another Vincentian priest, who's on the board of trustees here at St. John's. He always said, our job at DePaul, just like at St. John's, is to provide an elite education for non-elite students. And I think that's what everybody who works here is truly committed to. He also had said something else that he didn't originate, but he really made it one of the mantras that he used as the leader of a Vincentian Catholic University. And he would say, we provide a great education for our students because we're Catholic, not because they are. We're a place that all should feel included, all should come here for an excellent education, but that excellent education is inspired by a Catholic faith tradition, but at the same time doesn't mean we have to be part of that faith. So it really is about an ethos, an understanding of why it is we do what we do. So when you think about a great Catholic education, it is an education that would be great anywhere, but it is also an education with a great purpose. So when we have Dr. King here to present for us, it is a great opportunity for us to learn more about what it means to be at an institution that is focused on a Catholic education, and what does it mean to have the soul of Catholic education. So thank you all for coming out today. It's a really great opportunity for us to learn from a preeminent scholar who wants to speak about these issues that are of great importance to us. But before we have Dr. King come to the podium, one other speaker, one of our student leaders in the School of Education, Ryan Boswell. So please join me in thanking Ryan for coming up today.
Okay, good morning. My name is Ryan Boswell. I am a senior adolescent education major with a concentration in math from Bethpage, New York. I am very involved here on campus. I am a member of the President's Society. I am on the executive board for Alpha Psi Omega, which is the Theater Honor Society. I'm on the executive board for Kappa Delta Pi, which is the Education Honor Society. I am a student ambassador, School of Education ambassador, a substitute teacher on Long Island, and my freshman year I took my learning abroad in Rome, Italy. So St. John's is a very, very big part of my life, and I'm honored to be here today to introduce Dr. King. James E. King, PhD, is the Byrne Chair of Catholic Studies and the Director of the Center for Catholic Studies at St. Mary's University, San Antonio, Texas. His teaching, research, and leadership focus on renewing Catholic higher education and connecting scholarship with the life of the Church and society. As an undergraduate student, Dr. King majored in mathematics and philosophy, and he graduated from Berea College in Kentucky. He then earned his MA and PhD in Catholic theology and Catholic ethics from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Dr. King is the author or editor of several books, and in addition to books, he is published widely in leading academic and public outlets. His work appears in journals such as Horizons, New Blackfriars, Journal of Moral Theology, and Journal of Catholic Higher Education, as well as in America Church Life Journal, the Chronicle of Higher Education, National Catholic Reporter, and The Conversation. Dr. King is also an active public speaker, having been invited to lecture and present at leading universities and organizations across the country. Dr. King has received several honors for his teaching, including the Thoburn Teaching Award at St. Vincent College and the San Damiano Service Learning Award at Lourdes University. He was a faculty fellow at the Fred Rogers Center for Early Learning and Children's Media. He has served on boards and committees for Catholic theological ethics in the World Church, the College Theology Society, and the Society of Christian Ethics, as well as New Wine Skins. He currently serves as editor emeritus for the Journal of Moral Theology. King is widely recognized for his research on the outcomes of Catholic higher education. He leads the Higher Education Outcomes Study, a multi-year national project that measures the ways Catholic colleges and universities shape students' lives. The study has drawn attention in national media and professional associations, highlighting how Catholic higher education fosters not only faith and moral reflection, but also civic engagement, openness to diversity, and deeper meaning in graduates' work and lives. Through this combination of scholarship, leadership, and public engagement, Dr. King seeks to strengthen the mission of Catholic higher education and to contribute to the Church's intellectual and social traditions. His work at the Center for Catholic Studies continues to foster dialogue across campus, church, and community, ensuring that Catholic scholarship not only shapes students' lives, but also speaks to the broader challenges facing society today. His forthcoming book, The Soul of Catholic Higher Education, explores how Catholic colleges can reclaim their identity and serve as a model for all higher education. This effort aligns with the subject of his lecture this afternoon. On behalf of the student body and the wider community of St. John's University, I would like to welcome Dr. Jason King as a Vincentian Chair of the Social Justice Lecturer 2526. The theme for this series of lectures is the Catholic intellectual tradition in the university. This afternoon, he will speak on the soul of Catholic higher education. Dr. King.
Thanks. I had the pleasure of meeting Ryan at lunch today, and it's pretty amazing. So thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for coming here today. This is a wonderful sort of crowd. I'm always surprised when people show up. It's always very nice. I just wanted to start by saying that I have the most amazing job. I'm a college professor at a Catholic university. I get paid to think and read and write and then to talk about what I've thought and read and written. And I get to do this with other smart people, other faculty, and other sort of students. And to add to this, I do this work in theology, which means I get to think and read and talk about some of the most important things in life: faith, hope, joy, dignity, justice. It's a great gig. I highly recommend it, 10 out of 10. It didn't start this way. In college, I was a math major. I liked math. I was good at it. And then one day I was in complex analysis, which is differential equations for imaginary numbers. And the professor worked this proof on a board. It actually was across several boards. And at the end of it, he turned around, and I kid you not, he had a tear in his eyes and was like, "Isn't that the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life?" And I thought, oh, I'm not a math major. I just didn't see math the way that he viewed it. I to him, it was something more than numbers and logic. It was something captivating and something that moved him. And I didn't see that. That was not what I was. I was doing everything right in college, right? Math was a respectable major. I was working in the campus computer lab. It was 40 Mac Pluses, networked to 5 dot matrix printers. It was the 90s. So real world experience, right? I was on track. I went to Berea College in Kentucky. It's a non-denominational Christian college, which in Kentucky means Baptist. But it was founded to serve the students of Appalachia. Here's the kicker. There's no tuition. So to go there, you had to get good grades and good test scores, but then your family had to earn under a certain amount of money for you to qualify. And once you got in, everybody has to work 10 hours a week. So I began as a janitor, and then I worked my way up as a lab monitor, and then I graduated as senior programmer. I was designing software by the end of it. So I was doing everything right? The path had been set out for me, and I was following it. I would graduate. I graduated high school. I'd gone to college. I was going to graduate college with an employable degree and with job experiences. And I imagined that the future, I would go out, finish college, get a job, get married, have 2.5 kids. And in my mind, the only thing left after that was to die. But I sat in that complex analysis class, watching my professor's fascination with that proof, and I knew I was missing something. He loved math, and I wanted something like that. I wasn't reading extra math books. I wasn't contemplating the elegance of a proof, but there was something real there, something bigger, something more important that I needed and wanted in my life. And so I started to take any classes that I could from professors with a reputation for being excellent, even if they were known for being difficult. I had a political philosophy class where we covered Hobbes' Leviathan, and it was the first moment that I realized U.S. democracy is just one kind of democracy. Other kinds differ. What it was in the U.S. is different than England, different than India, different than France. I had a physics class where the professor started by saying he was going to lie to us the whole semester. He said, he informed us that we were going to do Newtonian mechanics, which was only a half-truth. He said if things start moving too fast, you needed Einsteinian mechanics, and if things got too small, you needed quantum mechanics, so that we would spend the whole semester just doing this little half-truth that was there. And perhaps the most important person for me was Dr. Fred de Rosé, a Spanish professor. He refused to go by Professor de Rosé. He insisted on going by Fred to remind students that every time he wrote his name, he wrote an F. I talked with him outside of the classroom, and we discussed everything school life, faith. We talked about books. He suggested additional things that I should sort of be reading. He talked about classes I should be taking and professors that might interest me. And so he helped me see that education was more than just following the right path, more than just getting a job. It was about old ideas and new ideas, high culture, popular culture, social sciences, natural sciences, everything that you can imagine that helps you to think about life and community and the world around me. I don't mean to suggest that I was a good student. I struggled. I did well in some classes. I did poorly in others. Some professors nominated me for awards. Some professors completely ignored me. I had one professor ask if I had a learning disability. I do, dyslexia, but he wasn't asking to be helpful. It was a good time. The point is, something moved me. Before my path had felt narrowed, shaped by pressures I couldn't see and didn't understand, I began to see a larger world, one of beauty and curiosity, values and purpose. And I felt like I understood myself better and could make decisions about the life I wanted to live. I could see how my beliefs about what is good and true and my relationships with friends and neighbors could guide my choices about how to live. I wanted meaningful work and a meaningful life. And I thought this might be possible because of my college education. This is what drove me to become a teacher. I felt like this awakening should be something for everybody. We should be more than our ability to work and produce. We should care and wonder, be moved by beauty and truth. We should laugh and cry, be drawn to others in love and friendship, be stirred up by injustice and mourn in times of loss. We should know we are not just defined by culture and economics and politics. We are more than employees and consumers, more than voters and statistics. We are persons capable of joy and with dignity. Plato described this kind of life as a cave where people mistakenly took shadows, where people moved out of a cave, where people mistakenly took shadows for reality. The Buddha spoke of the four sights: an old man, a sick person, a corpse, and a meditating ascetic, that led him to his pursuit of nirvana. W.E.B. Du Bois reflected on the role of education after emancipation in writing that true college will ever have but one goal: not to earn meat, but to know the end and aim of that life which meat serves. I had experienced some glimpse of this deeper life and its power and force. It moved me to become a teacher so that I might share it with others. And it drove me to study theology, to become a professor of theology. And I went to Catholic colleges not because they were perfect, but because I found in them a mission to point to that kind of education, the one that I experienced and wanted to share, the one that I thought was most important. And to put it simply, Catholic education had a soul. It is a soul that comes from Jesus' promise to have life and have it to the fullest, a life rooted in love of God and love of neighbor, expressed through caring for the vulnerable, building communities marked by compassion, telling the truth, and preserving the faith. The soul of Catholic education is not static, not an inert essence, but one that moves people. The soul pushes students with their needs upwards towards lives of meanings, concerns for neighbors, and doing what is right and good. So with the rest of this talk, I'd like to describe how the soul moves Catholic education from this bottom, the needs of people, up. So let's talk up. Let me do one thing. I got very excited and skipped my presentations. But let me start here. Perhaps the boldest claim that I'm making here is that Catholic education does something different, that it produces graduates that differ from graduates at secular institutions. So let me start there. In 2024 and again in 2025, those 25 results will be released in about 2 weeks. With support from the Center for Catholic Studies at St. Mary's, I worked with the national polling firm YouGov to design a study that could test the differences Catholic colleges make. Called the HERE study, a holistic impact report, we compared 1,000 graduates of Catholic colleges with 1,000 graduates of secular colleges. The results of studies confirmed 3 key elements that distinguish graduates from Catholic colleges from graduates of secular colleges. The first is a fulfilling and meaningful life. Now, to get at this question of satisfying lives and purpose, we drew on an established satisfaction of life scale and asked these participants to rate such questions, whether to strongly disagree, to strongly agree, on questions like, in most ways, my life is close to my ideal. The conditions of my life are excellent. I am satisfied with my life. So far, I've gotten the important things in life that I want, and if I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing. On these measures, graduates of Catholic colleges consistently came out ahead with the results, holding across 2024 and 2025. Catholic graduates were 7% more likely to say their life is close to the ideal, 12% to say the conditions of their life are excellent, 19% that they would change nothing. These numbers point to the way Catholic education shapes not only minds but whole lives. The tradition emphasizes emphasis on dignity, community, and the transcendent leaves a lasting mark. It shows that stories like Daniel are more common than we often realize. I had Daniel in my first year theology class, an impressive academic talent and a restless kind of curiosity. He's planning to become a doctor, but in his early days, he was wrestling with more than just that field. He was wondering, will medicine satisfy me? Will it be enough? He took this class, engaged it, was one of my best students. So much so that he added a theology major to his biology major and his pre-med focus. And it wasn't just his knowledge, it was the depth of his curiosity, his interest in all things, and how they all connected to one another. The theme that stayed with him, though, through this, from all of his theology courses, was how do you respond to your neighbor? How do you respond to those that are vulnerable, forgotten, or pushed to the margins? This theological framework led him to do Street Medicine, which is an official organization in Pittsburgh, where medical professionals or those interested in pursuing the medical field go out and work with those that are unhoused. He chose it not for a resume, not to get into medical school, but because he wanted to figure out how to do medicine in a way that aligned with his beliefs. Yeah. It was clarifying for him because he got to see what it meant not just to serve patients, but to serve whole people. And because of this, it helped him to shape the kind of doctor he wanted to become. Not just someone that is concerned with sickness, but concerned with people, not just concerned with those that show up, but with all people all around him, especially those that are often left out in the medical system. His is just an example, I think, of this first point about the ways that Catholic education produces a broader sense of meaning and purpose. The second major result from the HERE study was about civic and community engagement. We'd ask participants how many hours of volunteering they had done in the last 6 months, and then provide a checklist of volunteer activities to indicate what they had done. They could check multiple options, multiple responses. This included a variety of things from caring for your elderly neighbors, participating in environmental causes, mentoring youth, donating to local causes, volunteering with civic organizations. There's even options for none or other to include on these things. And across both 24 and 25, these rates held. Catholic graduates were more likely to volunteer in the last 6 months, 20% more likely, and to volunteer 50% more hours. Like the secular graduates, they donated to local causes and participated in fundraisers. That was the most number one kind of activity that was there. But graduates of Catholic colleges stood out when it came to mentoring, serving on local school boards or community boards, and volunteering at food banks. It wasn't that graduates of secular college didn't volunteer, they did. It was just that the graduates of Catholic colleges volunteered more frequently and in more ways. This shouldn't surprise us. Look at any Catholic college, and you'll see robust service programs. I did a quick look at St. John's University, and it highlighted how students do more than 110,000 hours of community work each year through its community-engaged learning programs and campus-wide initiatives on University Service Day. St. Mary's, where I work, has a whole day called Continuing the Heritage, where all the students, faculty, staff spend a whole day doing service and contribute more than 2,000 hours in that one day. This emphasis on community engagement is more than just a pedagogical strategy, even though it is a high-impact practice. It flows from a theological vision of the human person. Catholicism teaches that we are relational creatures in the image of the Trinitarian God who exists in relationship. To affirm human dignity is to affirm our responsibility to one another. Love of neighbor is not extracurricular, it's essential. Ethical dimensions, ethical decision-making was the third major area where Catholic college graduates stood apart. Getting at this is a challenge. If you ask people if they make ethical decisions, they say yes. So you can't ask them that question. Instead, you have to get at it by asking them a series of questions. We ask them about basic principles. We ask them one round, how important are these principles to you? And then we ask them again, how many of these principles do you factor in your own decision making, to get them to rank what was going on. And these principles were across the board, whether someone suffered emotionally, whether people were treated unequally, whether an action showed love for country, whether someone disrespected authority, whether someone violated purity norms, whether someone cared for the vulnerable, whether someone acted unfairly, someone betrayed someone in their group, whether someone conformed to tradition, and whether someone did something disgusting. Trying to get at the full range of these things. When we analyze these responses, Catholic college alumni were significantly more likely to rate multiple moral considerations as extremely important in judging right from wrong. Across both 24 and 25 studies, Catholic graduates were about 20 percent points more likely than secular graduates to say that all moral concerns were extremely important to them. It indicates that graduates of Catholic colleges demonstrate a deeper incorporation of ethical principles into their lives. But more than this, it suggests that Catholic-educated alumni see a wider range of moral concerns as critical to their judgment. One student I had shows, I think, this moral vision. He's a student of mine called Eric, extremely bright. He knew everything from Augustine to X-Men comics. I've had him in a number of my classes. I got to know him better and well through a series of conversations that we had as he was a gay man on a Catholic campus, and how these things, how he felt welcome most of the time, but not all of the time. But this formation that he had through all of his classes there led him to pursue an MA in a great books program. He left that. After completing that program, he became what he is now, which is vice president and risk manager of a bank. You would not think that that background would prepare him for those sort of views, but what he got chosen for is his ability to see the whole picture, to see patterns in human behaviors, to understand not just the law and the rules and the regulations, but how people think and reflect and act. And then through that can see where the risks and the vulnerabilities are well beyond the compliance expectations that are part of it. He is a really interesting, smart sort of person, and I think represents the kind of capacious moral formation that happens on Catholic campuses. Last point on this study is that it's important to ask, and it always comes up, whether or not this is just the students that show up at the school, so it's the students that you're measuring, or it's the schools that you're measuring. The simple answer is that it seems to be the schools. We tested these results across age, race, gender, religion, educational level, political affiliation, and even geography. And the goal was to try to see if it was the institution or some of these other factors that were correlated with these results. They were not. The pattern held across all of these sort of groups. Graduates of Catholic colleges consistently reported deeper life satisfaction, more fulfilling community engagement, stronger, more expansive ethical commitments. To put it sharply, a Hindu at a Catholic college would see these results over a Catholic at a secular school. I say this neither to brag about Catholic schools nor to diminish secular sort of schools. More to highlight what the soul of Catholic higher education is doing, what the soul of Catholic education is doing. Schools are animated by a vision that directs education towards living meaningful lives, towards engagement with others and ethical decision making. It is a direction that the soul moves Catholic colleges, the end that it pursues. That is one picture of this soul. It moves you upwards, but it begins at the bottom with the needs of students. So in the 1800s, millions of Catholic immigrants arrived in the United States from Ireland, Germany, Italy, Poland, and other places. They came seeking work, a better life, a safe place to raise their families, and at the same time retain their faith. By the 1870s, the Catholic population had grown to over 4 million, and nearly 200 Catholic colleges had been founded, including St. John's University. And their purposes were explicitly to serve, St. John's purpose was explicitly to serve the sons of New York's working class immigrants and Catholic families, who at the time were often excluded from Protestant colleges. These new immigrants faced difficult tensions. On the one hand, they needed jobs and wanted their children to succeed in American society. And on the other hand, they didn't want to give up their religion or be forced to become something that they weren't. The broader culture was often hostile to Catholics, viewing them as problematic immigrants who were strange, foreign, and dangerous. Groups like the Know Nothing Party and the Ku Klux Klan included Catholics in their list of prejudices. Catholic colleges developed to respond to these needs. They were founded with the conviction that higher education should prepare students for both temporal and eternal ends. One of the earliest statements of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities captured this vision by saying Catholic schools sought to form citizens for the city of God while preparing them for the business of life. These schools developed to attend to the needs of students, and all of these students were local, or almost all of these students were local. And Catholic colleges emerged then shaped by these histories and shaped by the people that they were served. As I have made my way through academia, I've experienced these different kinds of colleges. The first one, I currently work at St. Mary's University in San Antonio. Founded in the 1850s by the Marianists, it became a modest school serving the sons of local families, mainly Mexican and Mexican Americans. In 1891, the Marianists acquired 75 acres west of downtown San Antonio. This new campus was called St. Louis College. It functioned initially as a boarding school for boys, but by 1904, it expanded to offer a full college curriculum. In 1921, all college classes moved from the downtown location to this campus. It resulted in the loss of a sweet, sweet property on the Riverwalk. If you've ever been to San Antonio, the Riverwalk is this wonderful, wonderful space that's downtown, and there's a hotel there called the Four Brothers, and it has a plaque that's used to be St. Mary's campus. It's good that we moved, but it's still a loss. By 1927, it became St. Mary's College, and then 2 years later, it became St. Mary's University. This move to the west side of San Antonio significantly increased the university's ability to serve Hispanic students. The location placed the university closer to predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods, improving access for Mexican-American families. Expanded facilities allowed the university to broaden its academic offerings and more fully address the educational needs of the communities. It started with a classical curriculum, expanded to include education and business. In 1934, it added the first and really only law school in San Antonio that produced legal education to first-generation and Hispanic students. I think of this kind of university, St. Mary's University, as representing what I'm calling meaning-centered Catholic institutions. They exemplify what I think is the most common type of Catholic college. Relatively small, liberal arts schools that draw a majority of Catholic students while welcoming a broad mix of others. Its curriculum includes theology classes that introduce students to the Catholic intellectual tradition, but it's not meant to impose beliefs, but to situate learning within the broader Catholic context. The campus environment reflects this experience. Events open with prayers. There's Catholic symbols that shape spaces. The language of faith provides a vocabulary that people use on campus. The identity's primarily not about boundaries, but about context. Right? It's an education that's inseparable from the community. When you talk to students, they describe it as professors who know their students by name, classmates who hold doors for them, and mentors who take times to listen. At St. Mary's, this took shape through the Marianist tradition of family spirit and a student body deeply shaped by Hispanic culture. They created a campus rooted in mutual concern and shared purpose. They experienced Catholicism not as an external authority, but as a texture of community life, through friends and faculty, through moments of recognition and accompaniment. Type 1. Second type. Last year, my daughter, Colleen, graduated from a different kind of Catholic college, Carlow University. Less meaning-centered and more marginalized-centered. Carlow University was founded in 1929 by the Sisters of Mercy, a Catholic order that had come from Ireland to Pittsburgh nearly a century earlier to educate the poor, care for the sick, and uplift the immigrants. The college, then called Mount Mercy College, was created to give Catholic women access to higher education at a time when opportunities were scarce and often closed to them. So from the start, it embodied the mercy charism, combining intellectual rigor with practical concern for those marginalized in society. My daughter entered as a wobbly first-year student. By the way, I cleared this talk with her, so I have her informed consent. Negotiating both dyslexia and high anxiety. She graduated with honors, cum laude, worked as an RA, and even served as the literal poster child of the school. She said they were going to come and do this photo shoot for her, and I was getting these texts as she was doing. She's like, "Oh my gosh, they're bringing all sorts of equipment. Oh, they told me to take off my jacket so they can see the tattoos on my arms." And I'm thinking, "Oh, honey, I know exactly what they're doing here." She said, "They're having me sit at a pottery wheel. I don't do pottery, I do studio art." I'm like, they're thinking artist. And so now these billboards were across the sort of city, and she graduated flourishing. Now she's a tattoo artist, piercer, and I think probably makes about as much money as I do. So, so Carlo did what these marginalized center schools do. They serve first-gen, vulnerable students, people in the surrounding area, anybody that sort of needs help. Half of Carlo's students are Pell Grant eligible. Nearly the same amount are first gen. The Mercy tradition shaped its mission to form students who are professionally capable and socially conscious, grounded in values of justice, hospitality, and service. Its Catholic identity is less overt in religious events and more in how students are treated. Faith is lived out through mentoring, tutoring, pedagogy, and a focus on student support. And it is not just student success, but students who go on to work towards justice for others, carrying on the marginalized-centered mission after the school. These marginalized-centered universities tend to be located either in dense urban areas or in deeply rural areas. They're institutions created to serve those often overlooked. I spoke about Carlo here, partly to brag about my daughter, but I could have spoken about St. John's University. One more. I like alliteration. So we have the meaning-centered institutions and the marginalized-centered institutions. The third one is the magisterium-focused institutions. I haven't worked at these schools, but I have worked with colleagues and friends who have done this. And I'm friends with people who have graduated from these schools. Jose Gonzalez graduated from Franciscan University in Steubenville, a colleague and friend of mine who I've worked with on several occasions. Franciscan University began in 1946 in Steubenville at the invitation of the bishop to serve people who were coming back from World War II. It was meant to serve them, though, by fulfilling the vision, the Franciscan vision, not just to educate for education's sake, but to form Christian disciples grounded in the Franciscan charism. Over time, it adopted the name Franciscan University in 1986 and reached its mission. It aimed to serve students drawn to an academically rigorous education, but within a fully Catholic context, one attentive to the teachings of the Church's magisterium. It especially appealed to students who wanted their faith to be the central organizing principle of their college life. Of his experience, Jose said, as someone, quote, "As someone who did not get any sort of Catholic education until I went to college, I would not be who I am today without the formation and education I received at Franciscan University. It gave me a deeper understanding of my faith and solidified my beliefs that have kept me grounded when the trials and storms of life have hit. It gave me a worldview and a lens by which to examine and evaluate the world around me that has allowed me to remain steady despite the rest of the world seemingly falling apart." So 3 types. There are more than 200 Catholic colleges and universities, and I note these 3 types, meaning-focused, marginalized-focused, magisterium-focused, that capture the essential 3 types of the whole. Catholic higher education moved from the bottom up. Each school began with a response to the people that were before them. St. Mary's, the Mexican Americans on the west side of San Antonio, Carlo, the first-gen working class and adult learners in Pittsburgh, Franciscan University, from World War II vets to faith-focused students. They began with this bottom, but the attention to the needs did not stop there. These schools began where students were and then moved them step by step towards bigger questions, broader views, and ultimate truths. Getting them to situate their work and lives in relationship to the broader community, seeing their education as a way to serve neighbors and strangers, and orienting their learning towards God. They were moving their students toward the outcomes that the HERE study indicated: meaningful life, community engagement, ethical decision-making. This bottom-up movement of attending to students and moving them to fuller lives is the soul of Catholic education. This is the view from my office in San Antonio at St. Mary's. I sit behind a large sort of window. And it's kind of ordinary. It's a general quad with trees and open sort of spaces as well. It distracts me quite often in a wonderful way. In the morning, it's full. Students are rushing by, going to class. Sometimes there's tables, Greek organizations, service groups, cultural associations. Students stop and talk. There's flyers passed out. The whole scene is alive, full of energy. Then, just as suddenly, it gets quiet. Everyone gets to class, and the whole quad empties. And so I have to think about why it matters. Seeing the students on the quad, it's easy to remember why the institution exists. It exists for the people that are there. The presence is what makes the tables worth setting up, the classrooms worth opening, the faculty worth hiring. But when the quad empties, when the chatter subsides, I have to think a little bit more and reflect upon what we're doing. I remember this bottom-up dynamic, beginning where students are, but moving them upward towards outcomes that can make life fuller and more coherent. The study I did provides some evidence of those outcomes, what they look like, that they have meaningful lives, that they care for their neighbors, that they think it's important to do what is right and make decisions that are good. This movement from bottom up is diverse. Colleges have a different background, a different history. Some were founded by sisters serving women and marginalized that had no other place to go. Others built in response to Hispanic communities on the margins of a city. Still others who need and wanted faith formation. Each type carries a soul in a different way. Each curriculum moves with a different rhythm. However, the different types in the curriculum move in the same direction, from the foundations of attending to students' needs toward the top of human flourishing. Thank you.
So thank you, Jason. Now he's willing to accept questions or comments from our gathered community here. But please wait till the microphone is brought to you before you ask your question. So if you'd raise your hand, and the microphone will find its way to you.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a student here.
Wonderful.
I really liked how you spoke about just the Catholic faith tradition and how it affects students.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious when you were taking surveys of students educated in the Catholic faith, do you notice any differences in the data from a student who was educated like an Augustinian tradition as compared to like a Vincentian tradition, or was it pretty static all around?
So that is a wonderful, fantastic question. We didn't get that detailed. So one of the things that was, when we first ran this study, we didn't know what kind of results we would get. We were really trying to ask if there was a difference between Catholic graduates of Catholic institutions and graduates of sort of secular sort of institutions. And I was working with a close friend of mine. I'm like, what if it comes back and it's bad? He's like, well, then you bury it. But so we were lucky to find that, and so the second iteration is an attempt to try to get at this. So questions that I think are relevant are precisely this one. Is there something different between like an Augustinian or a Marianist, a Jesuit, a Vincentian one that have different sort of focuses? Some of that I think you get in the different types of schools that I tried to highlight there, but I don't have the evidence for this. Another question on that same line comes up is size. Does it matter if it's big, if it's small? And those are questions I hope to follow up or would encourage students and their own educational researchers to pursue that question. One thing I try to avoid quite a bit is pitting one type of Catholic college against another type of Catholic college. And I also try not, even though my results are comparing it with secular schools, I try not to like pitch it against that as well. I really try to focus on what are the things that are sort of good there as well. But your hunch, I think, is right, and I hope you pursue it.
Hi, I'm Kelvin. I'm another student here. And I was just wondering, I found your talk about taking different classes just to kind of see what stuck very relatable. I was wondering if you had any other specific stories that stuck out or any other classes that you took during that time.
Oh, yeah, great question. The physics class was brutal. Like I was just trying to and then realizing that I was only learning this little piece of it. That was really good. I had this history class that was from the history of the Christianity from Reformation onward. And I tell this story because the teacher lectured 50 minutes 3 times a week for 15 weeks. And it sounds like it would be like the most boring thing in your sort of existence. But the best way I can describe it, it was like a mini series or like one of those like true crimes podcasts that we get fixated on, because it was just kind of gripping narrative about how everybody trying to live out and trying to do the things that are faithful to the gospel and then getting into fights with each other and then trying not saying that fighting is bad and then getting into fights again. So it was just this that was a wonderful sort of one. Spanish, I went to Mexico, and my Spanish professor, who he was just a mentor. I never took him. I was terrified of him in class because he did write Fs. But that opening up the capacity for language shapes your whole view of what's going on. Later on, so that's another one. Later on, I love my math degree, even though I wasn't doing it. Just for conceptually trying to think in different ways. There was a moment. Do we have math or science folk in here? Yeah, I thought, right, Ryan. Yeah, a few of them. When there's a moment in math where I realized I wasn't supposed to be solving problems. I was supposed to be looking at the world through a mathematical lens. So that was really kind of formative for me. All of those were there. I'll say 2 more things. One is I've tried to design classes like that, so I'm going to pitch my 2 favorite classes. One is a class called God, Work, and Money, which is I just get students to think about their major in light of Catholic social teachings on work and economics, because at a liberal arts school, oftentimes you get the major, but you don't have time to think about why you're majoring and what you're doing and the reasons for it and how this major might serve the common good. Like they just haven't had time or space to think about that. And the other one that I love dearly is a course called Aliens, Heroes, Monsters, and Jesus. So if you like science fiction, this is your course. And I just walk through because my thesis for this is that it's 2 things. One is that science fiction is like political theology, analyzing the world sort of around you. And the other one is that students are formed by these things that they love, and they oftentimes don't think about those pieces. So those are the 2 courses that I try to pitch that make them sort of interesting, especially in the core curriculum. And one last story of a student, Anna, who I loved and was brilliant and amazing. But I talked to her, and she would one of these students that would just take classes, like all of these challenging classes, and she would say, I try never to look at my grades. And she would say, like at the end of the semester, I would try not to look at my grades. I'm like, how do you do? She goes, the best I made it was like 5 days. But she had this, she was like, I shouldn't care about those grades. And it's hard not to because they're supposed to be helpful for feedback, but we get distracted by them as well. So, but any classes that you engage in, I think can have that sort of insight, so.
So my question is, what is the most impactful course you ever took?
That I ever took? That is a wonderful and easy question to answer. I had a course called Into the Woods. It was based on the Broadway play Into the Woods. The first act is a bunch of interwoven fairy tales, and the second act is when they all fall apart. And it was taught by an English professor and a philosopher who were like best friends. So they would like jab at each other and converse and like draw everybody in. And so it was like this whole semester of like dynamics back and forth. So we looked at this. What we did when the course was look at fairy tales and how fairy tales and fantasy stories created worlds. And then we drew in this phenomenologist of religion, Mircea Eliade, who did this book on sacred and the profane, about how the worlds are marked off in the sacred and the profane, and how you move between these sort of boundaries. And read that sort of those stories in light of this. And it helped me just to think big picture about what was going on in the world and the possibility of different worlds and the possibilities of different values. And it was just this wonderful course that was intellectually enriching, but also between the team taught course, the professors sharing their joy of learning and talking with one another about the subjects. And so that was it. And as a student being brought into that was just a real sort of gift. So.
Thanks so much for your talk.
Thanks.
Dr. King. My question is, do you identify any kind of practices or some kind of shared ethos at these places that is what is transmitting these outcomes to students? So do you have any explanations or theories as to what is driving these different outcomes?
Yeah. I've got some theories. So I want to be careful with some of the theories. I want to add, the 2025 results aren't out, but they'll come out in the next two things. But I'll add like two little pieces to it that I think are sort of important and to get to this question. One is that graduates of Catholic institutions report higher degrees of mental health and well-being. And the other one, these are two stats that go together, is that graduates of Catholic colleges talk about faith more, not surprising, but they also talk about diverse views more, both inside and outside the classroom, and that was a nice, surprising finding. And so my theory goes in kind of two steps, is that Catholic colleges have a soul, and this soul is present, but Catholic colleges also realize that that's not everybody is the same. And so if you have a view and you realize that there's other people that don't share this, you have to be a little bit more intentional about what you're doing and a little bit more respectful about how those are sort of different. But that difference also helps people think about their own views and perspectives. So that's the big picture piece, I think, that gets them to think about life, gets them to think about their neighbors, gets them to think about right and wrong, and then you sort of see this cashing out in the sense of this alignment of their values and their life, which is a piece that seems to indicate health, and also this kind of, I think, an interesting connection between having a perspective and also that enabling you to be more open to diverse views. So that's the piece that's there. Underneath that, I do really think that this has to do with the core curriculum, those general ed sort of requirements. I think that those things are absolutely sort of essential. Even when we have cores that aren't quite put together coherently or effectively, taking those classes outside of your major, or taking classes that connect your major to bigger ideas, bigger themes, situating your major in this idea of sort of the broader purposes, that's that key, I think, dynamic. Sometimes it happens in service stuff. I know, and I think this is true at most Catholic schools, professional fields will have an ethics class that's usually rooted in Catholic social teaching, Catholic ethical sort of tradition, and that helps to sort of get them to think about what they should be doing and why. We have a business school at St. Mary's, and it's fully endowed, pretty prominent, and it has this huge mission up on the top, and it really is a mission about business for the common good, and it's just there as you sort of walk on. So that there's something about, even at its loosest, it frames whatever field you're going into in those broader terms. And I think that's structural, but I think it has to do mainly with that curriculum sort of pieces.
Building on your answer to Chris, I'm wondering how much of that do you think is that when being part of general education and being part of teaching in the core curriculum is a shift where you're, right, it's not aimed at, and you need to know X, Y, and Z for this job, but it's really focused on forming people. And how much does that have to be kind of that shift among the professors contribute to the outcome? And do you have theories on how we could communicate that better so that other people understand what it is that we're doing in the core curriculum, informing persons?
Yeah.
Not.
No, yeah, and I've wrestled with these questions in my own experiences. Let me acknowledge first that that's hard. We don't, academics are trained very narrowly in their field, and you have to be to get out and get the expertise that you need. And then if you're fortunate to get a job, you're like working hard with 3, 4, 5 classes and research on top of that and administrative stuff as well. So there's not a lot of time for you to sit back and think. And I will run into, and I imagine most of you all have too, run into people that want more and don't find the time to sort of do that. So it's hard. My friend of mine had the best line, which was, I just want to get back to grad school when I sat around and talked with my buddies and my friends. Not the lack of money part, but the leisure part. So it's hard. That's hard. And I think you also see it in students too. If you're 17, 18, trying to imagine what's valuable when you're 25 and 30, it's hard to see the value of a core curriculum when you're trying to recruit students. That's really hard. And then you're looking at a price tag, that's really hard too. So even though you go to alumni and they're like, oh, I love the core curriculum, I love the core curriculum, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 years out. And it is true, these results held like even for young graduates, 20, but also like 60-year-olds as well. So I think it's hard. So that's the first kind of acknowledgement. I think to do that, you need a little bit of a structural sort of shift to find times for people across disciplines to come together and talk. And I don't know how to make that, but and not talk policy or decisions. I know in faculty senates, there's oftentimes this need to make decisions immediately, but to talk about books or ideas, and a lot of times those differences tend to disappear. A philosophy professor on campus calls it intellectual friendship, is what we need to sort of cultivate. And he just tries to get people together to read books. And it doesn't really matter what books, as long as you're getting together and reading something and having some time to talk to each other. So that would be my solution, find institutional space and time to do that. And I guess you'd have to create incentives to reward it, but just intellectual friendship over time. It's a great one.
I just want to thank you for this.
Oh, thank you.
As a 76-year-old woman who graduated from this school and 2 other Catholic institutions and 1 CUNY school. This gave me the insight on how my life has been structured and how grateful I am
Good.
for what it is and how I see myself now.
Good.
And the Catholic Foundation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's like the best comment ever. Like.
So when we are engaging in a conversation, certain reality is brought into production. And thank you for providing access to such a reality, which is different from we generally perceived, which is more authentic, mythopoetic for me, or soul-oriented. I really feel the moment of grace. So my question is, would you like to share a little bit more, or kind of how Catholic education and truth seeking are paralleled? You know, the goal of education does not happen automatically many times or sometimes.
Yeah.
Right, so thank you so much.
Yeah. The simple answer to me is that it is a commitment to the truth of the dignity of the person made in the image and likeness of God. This is the thing that I think grounds it. I think, I'll explain that statement just for a second. I think there's a lot of forces that pull all of higher ed off course, like they're just there. There's demographic forces that people have been scared about for 10 years, and they're starting to hit. There's financial forces. There's a business model in higher education that's just not sustainable. We keep raising prices for people, demanding it, and we can't sort of send people more and more sort of into debt. I think there's cultural dynamics questioning about what's the value of a degree? Can we get it another way? Is there other things that are there? There's questions about the purpose of what are we doing? Why are we doing? What should we sort of be doing? All that's being litigated in the judicial sphere or in the political sphere, but all of those are forces that are real and very powerful. And if you're like an administrator or a president or a vice president and your job is to like keep the place afloat, you're focusing on like, what's the ROI? What's the marketing plan? What's the next software that's going to save us? Will AI help us to reduce costs? How do we bring in sort of donors? And those are all important questions, but it's so easy to get caught in that immediate needs that you forget those purposes. And that you can have sympathy for that, it can still be wrong. And so that returning to a sense that students, faculty, staff, administrators, all of these are people, human beings, made in the image and likeness of God that are respectful. You need to hold on to that. Otherwise, what happens to your education is that you produce students that are worker drones, or produce students that are seeking fame, fortune, power, right? Like status and attention, seeking sort of money or seeking sort of political power, but not with a sense of their broader ends or purposes. And so you're just kind of cranking out people that are useful and nothing else. And that is terrible. And I think then if we're participating in that, we feel terrible about ourselves too. And I think administrators that care about these institutions also feel that's not what they want. And so if we can remind ourselves that we're doing these pieces because there is some good at stake, some common good at stake, that your neighbor is at stake, that your life is at stake, that your family and friends, your strangers, even the enemies, their goodness is at stake there. And if you can retain that, just have that moment to step back, to remind yourself of that is so sort of essential. And this is what I was hoping to capture with this, is that even, I love it when students are on campus. I'm depressed in the summers when there's no students. It looks like, what am I doing here? Like it's abandoned. So I love students on campus, but like without those moments of remembering why I'm here, I think you lose direction very sort of quickly. And that I try to take that into my teaching as like, why does this matter? So does it, yeah, okay, thanks. One more question. What was the last word?
Okay, well, for one, thank you for coming to speak with us today.
Thank you.
It was very inspiring. One of the questions I have is, when you showed the survey, it talked about service and the amount of students that volunteer. I'm just curious, after everything you spoke about, is there a specific cause that you love giving back to, that you always felt drawn to? And what are the type of ways that you give back with that Catholic education being rooted within you?
Oh, that's a nice question, yeah. It was a funny thing that came out of the survey that Catholic graduates stood out at food banks and food distribution. And I've got two areas. And one is food ministry. I've always been attracted to that. I'm always hungry, I think. And don't like being not hungry. And it's such an immediate kind of concrete good that I think that you can do. It is, I think it was St. Vincent de Paul, right? May the poor forgive us for the food we give them. And I feel like that's been sort of my reflection upon that when I'm sharing the food or working in a soup kitchen, that to just be thankful of the presence and the gift of everybody that's there. That's been probably the most kind of formative piece for that. The second service, and I'm thinking of stuff outside my teaching, which is my first love, but the second one is coaching. I coach like middle school, young kids soccer, which is hilarious. I love that stuff. Like if you're like a U8 soccer coach, it's wonderful. Your all-stars are the ones that know what's going on. Like, and then there's snacks at the end. And then you can then if you follow them up, you can teach them things. Like if you get to a certain level, it gets way, way too serious and way too competitive. And I'm less interested in that, but those young levels of working, excelling, figuring out what's going on, having fun, I really sort of enjoy that sort of age group as well. And so those are the two, mentoring and food, I think, apart from education. Yeah. Which puts me right in the middle of the results. Thank you all very much. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. King, for an informative and stimulating contribution to the education of the St. John's University community. Your lecture has been live streamed and recorded. It will be posted on the Vincentian Center website under the Vincentian Chair of Social Justice. I should note that 4 other Vincentian universities have been offered the opportunity to watch this presentation with us or to view it later. Niagara University here in New York State, DePaul University in Chicago, Adamson University in the Philippines, and DePaul College in India. We greet our friends and our colleagues at those worthy institutions. As I said at the beginning, this lecture is the second of 6. A schedule for all the sessions can be found on the Vincentian Chair of Social Justice website and or by asking us at the Vincentian Center. We invite you to mark your calendars. 1 more this semester, 3 next semester. The current session was prepared with the considerable support of the School of Education, and we recognize Dean Wolfinger, and especially Dr. Don McClure, for their noteworthy contribution to this effort. Let me also offer a word of thanks to my planning committee, which included Dr. Megan Clark, Dean Teresa Delgado, Dr. Chris Vogt, and Dr. Basilio Montero. And I need to also thank my confrere, Father Tree, who has been our recorder and live streamer for this session. The next session will take place on November 17th and proceed with the support of Dean Luca Yandoli and the Collins College of Professional Studies. The title will be The Catholic Intellectual Tradition in an Era of AI. Please plan to join us for that presentation. You would be most welcome. And so, thank you to everyone for attending and to our friends at our other Vincentian universities. May the rest of your day be blessed. Thank you.